français est langue belle, belle langue. Oui. La prononciation est très belle. Pour le japonais, c'est difficile, mais oui, très beau.
Certainement sexy, sophistiqué, stylé.
Toujours avec l'image de fashion, amour.
Les mots en anglais et en français sont considérés un peu comme ce qu'on appelle les fashion statements.
Who's got the better French, by the way? Is it the folks doing sake bombs at a bar in Tokyo, or is it the folks in the West Island? Good question. Good question. It's French Week on the Elias Macko Show. Now, earlier this month, English Week became the biggest story in Quebec. Who can forget? A Quebec City Cégep Carnot. They dared to celebrate the English language for the week, and the story ended up in Quebec's National Assembly. Politicians were outraged. Premier Legault said it was not a good idea. Liberal MNA André Fortin said the event should be canceled. So with that in mind, we here at the Elias Macko Show said, hey, let's do something tongue-in-cheek. Let's do something that perhaps could lead to the National Assembly sending out a letter of condemnation for CJ-800 for some reason. So we decided to do French Week. We're doing a segment every day dedicated to French, its place in Quebec, Canada, and the world. This morning, joined by a colleague over at Noovo, Étienne Fortin-Gauthier is a reporter and anchor at Noovo, and he has spent a portion of his career traveling the world in search of French.
Absolutely.
Étienne, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Elias.
Yeah, it's great. So, you know what's funny? Like, we've been Twitter friends for the longest time.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been a fan of your work. I think,
Yeah, same for me.
So it's fun to meet you in person here.
Absolutely.
Why don't you introduce yourselves to our listeners? Listen, every morning I'm reading French media, so I'm familiar with French media. Some people may not be. Yes. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
So I was born and raised in Ville-Saint-Laurent, of course, Montrealer.
He's a VSL boy.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
And now I work for Noovo television station. It's part of the Bell family, of course. But and I work as a reporter, covering mainly politics, social issues. But before that, I was in Toronto, working for TFO, the public French television of Ontario, serving the linguistic minority of Ontario, the French people there.
So that's part of the reason why we said you would be perfect to come on this week, because I think you understand minority languages. You may be able to understand the Anglo perspective because you've seen the Franco minority perspective in Ontario, right? And also you studied in a bilingual program in Toronto.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Glendon College. It's a bilingual campus in the heart of Toronto. So there I had classes in French and English, and the desire was to understand more the bilingual side of Canada, to understand our two language and the relationship between minorities, majority population. So yes, I have a good comprehension of the linguistic minorities, including Anglo-Quebecers.
And so let's start off by telling our listeners about being a francophone in Ontario, right? So you are the minority in that majority. You're in the majority of Anglos in Ontario and in Canada as well, right? Yeah. Small fish, big sea, right?
It's true.
How do Francos in Ontario feel right now? Like, how do they feel when it comes to government and that kind of thing?
It's not always easy, but like for Anglo-Quebecers, sometimes they have difficulties getting services in English or getting access to education in their language. Yeah. So it's the same thing in Ontario. But sometimes it's even worse because the access to university program in their language or to healthcare in French, it's very hard in Ontario. In some region in the east or in the north, it's easier. Yeah. But when you're in Toronto, there's about 100,000 French speakers, and that's sometimes their only language. And they're not always bilingual because some of them are immigrants and they just come to Canada. They want to go to live in Toronto, their dream city, and they don't have access to services in French. So sometimes the criticism we hear from Franco-Ontarians or Anglo-Quebecers are similar.
It's interesting because when I go to Toronto, obviously a very multicultural city, you hear lots of languages. Yes. But I'm always like, wow, I hear tons of French on the streets of Toronto.
It's true because there's 100,000 French speakers in Toronto, but there's also 1 million Anglophones speaking French in Ontario because French is taught in elementary school, in high school. So French is not uncommon in Ontario either.
And it's so that million number. I mean, because that's right now in Quebec, you have about 1 million Anglos, right, that would call themselves Anglophone in this province. Okay, so I guess I'll start off this way. What do you think the vitality of French, right? If someone says, how vibrant is French? Maybe we took a look at it two ways, in Canada and then in Quebec, because some people are questioning. People say Quebec is at French is at threat in Quebec. I'd love your perspective.
Yeah, I would say that in some ways it is. We live in an Anglophone ocean in North America, so in some ways it is. But at the same time, it's a very dynamic French community with a strong television artistic industry. So we have to continue investing in that. But being in Ontario, I saw a population that is more fragile, of course. In Ontario, there's the population is the French vitality is more fragile. That's a fact, and I saw it in the last few years. But that's why I wanted to see elsewhere how it was also, and to be able to compare and see the perspective. Because here we have a lot of language fights sometimes, but the perspective about French elsewhere is not always the same, and sometimes it's surprising. Some countries want to embrace French when they don't even have an historic link to French language. So,
that's true. Like we played off the top, right? People in Tokyo that make a big effort to embrace French culture. Right?
That's very shocking, surprising. So in Tokyo, they have French signs in almost every stores because it's sexy. It's a language of Paris, of chic. It makes people dream. It's the language of gourmet, of great cuisine. So they put French, but most people don't speak French. It's just a marketing tool, but the problem sometimes it's bad French because people don't know how to write it. So one of the best restaurant in the Tokyo French restaurant is Ta gueule. It's shut up. So they took that name because they didn't know it meant shut up in French. Yeah. But anyway, it's still a great restaurant and a very popular restaurant.
I would imagine, because you see that all the time, like how English is used in foreign countries, and people just don't know it perfectly. So you'll get to hilarious situations, and I can imagine French would be even worse because it's less known.
It's true. But there's a curiosity for this language, and English is so common these days that French is a way to differentiate yourself, to be more competitive, to get a job. You say you speak French, so it's a lot of them it's a marketing tool or competitive tool.
It's French Week on the Elias Macko Show, continuing our discussion with Étienne Fortin-Gauthier. He's a political and society journalist at Noovo, our good colleagues across the hallways and streets over at Bell Media. Étienne, I want to talk about this because this is something I think every member of the media in Quebec struggles with it. Well, some people don't struggle. They just do whatever they want. But, I struggle about when we talk about language issues, how much to talk about it. Is it too much? Are we, and are we sometimes making something that's small bigger than it is, right? I wonder on the French side, do you ever, when the story comes out, about signage in stores, look at this store did an English sign, or it's a Rib Fest. Oh my God, Rib Fest. They came into town. It's a tour that goes to all these cities in Ontario, and they came to Montreal and they kept their old signs that are only in English. And I say, oh God, are we blowing things out of proportion? What goes through your mind?
But sometimes, and with Twitter especially, sometimes stories become enormous. So we have to be very cautious as journalists and choose and select what story is important to cover and not cover, especially. And it's true, sometimes stories are getting out of proportion. Sometimes not. It's important to talk about the bigger issues, probably the place of French in Canada and the future of French and how to protect. I was talking about the culture earlier. With Netflix, a lot of people are watching English shows from everywhere in the world. So how do we protect our culture, the French culture, this big TV industry? If it continues in that direction, it will probably die. So that's why also we need to protect and to think about these issues, but not to fuel and put fire on the gas. Or gas on the fire.
Gas on the fire, exactly. So I still remember there was, and I brought this up a few times over the years. It's almost 5 years I've been here, and I still remember opening up La Presse, the tablet, La Presse Plus.
Yes.
Is it still La Presse Plus? La Presse.
Yeah,
Open
yeah.
up La Presse. And there was an opinion piece, an editorial from a man, and he was upset that when he goes on Tinder, the profiles are all in English. Like even francophones, they if they're going to go on Tinder, they publish their profile in English, right? He's like, how is this possible? It's Quebec. You should be proud of that. And I thought of that, and I saw the story, and I said, there's two ways of looking at this. One is total overreaction, but two, there's got to be something going on in the Francophone community with what you mentioned, Netflix and streaming and the international influence for people to be concerned about dating profiles.
Yes, right? and sometimes it's the first step to lose your language, to not be able to write in French. We saw the ad from the Quebec government, you remember, with the bird, right?
The peregrine falcon, right? The peregrine
Exactly.
falcon, yeah, that's right.
So, but that's extreme, but sometimes it's the first step. So we have to talk about these issues, but in Quebec, the good news is that we're able to talk about these issues and debate openly and peacefully. Almost all the time. So I think we're a very mature society, and we have these linguistic debate. There's a lot of groups defending Anglophones, also QCGN, for example.
Yep.
And everyone has a voice, and I talk to them every month. So
you do.
Even on the French side, I give voices to different perspectives, and that's the important part, to not be to be neutral and to give.
Do you ever get pushback on that? Like you're like, geez, why are you talking to these people? These are just angry phones, not Anglophones, angry phones. Do you ever get that?
To be honest, no. People are very respectful and want to hear the different perspectives. So I shared the opinion of QCGN many times on air, and I never got criticism for that.
Well, that's good to hear, right?
Yes.
And when I have Francophone voices on the show, we do, you're in Montreal. Yeah. Like, I just look at our schedule yesterday, right? We were talking about the rising price of cars. Our guest is a Francophone. Yeah. I was talking to the guy that did 13 birdies, right? in the mini putt game, right? It's a conversation. He's Francophone, speaks English, and all that. We have so many Francophone voices that speak English, and they come on the show, right?
And Marlene Jennings, she came to Noovo many times. Yeah. You see, so we have these conversations going on.
You're a VSL boy. You live in the plateau. I live downtown now. I grew up in Côte-des-Neiges. What's on the ground completely not connected to what's happening on Twitter or at the National Assembly. Would you say that?
So, sometimes, the big debates, because on the daily life, we live in French, right? Yeah. In Montreal. Yeah. So there's a few issues, but on the ground and in the daily life, it's going well.
As a Francophone, have you encountered this? You go to the coffee shop and you can't get served a few times.
I gotta be honest. Yeah. A few times, and it's linked to different issues, and sometimes as a client, a French-speaking client in the French capital of North America, it would be appreciated to be served in French, but
I think that's where Anglos should try and put ourselves at times in those shoes. Yeah. Sometimes we don't want to talk about that aspect of things that, Francophone, those concerns are valid if they can't get service in their own language, and maybe at work they're being told, well, we're not going to let you have this job because you don't have, I can understand the concerns. Yeah. Étienne, before we run out of time here, I want to take this tour around the world, because you did this show called Nomad, right?
Exactly.
For TFO in Ontario. And I'm just looking at the places. You go South Korea. Obviously, we played the clip from Japan, Serbia, Cambodia.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah. But for example, South Korea, I started there, and I was surprised that they joined South Korea, the International French Organization, even if they have no history, no link with French. I was shocked, so I wanted to see why the heck they joined the French organization, and I understood that they wanted to connect with Africa and to do business with Africa, so they are forcing some of their diplomats, some of their public servants to learn French because they want to be able to reach Africa and this new economic market. I went to Cambodia, where I met young students who learn French to go study in France and to be able to get a job in the government of Cambodia, because it's an old French colony. Yep. So most documents are still in French in Cambodia, and they have to know French to work in the government in the country. So many stories linked to French in different countries. I was in Louisiana recently.
Oh, this is great. Let's talk about Louisiana. And Louisiana is important because we've heard Francois Legault.
Yeah.
He has said, we don't want Quebec to become the next Louisiana.
It's
so
true.
What's happening?
So I went underground to see how it is today, and it's true. French is not in a good state there, of course. Yeah. But there's a young generation. They want to bring French back, and they want to embrace their heritage. So right now in Lafayette, one of the city, or in the French Quarter of New Orleans, you see French signs almost everywhere, and the Americans, English-speaking Americans, see that positively because it's a way to embrace their heritage. So they're very proud of that, to see French there. So the relationship with French can be very different depending on the country and the perspective. There, it's a good thing to see French on signs coming in more and more.
But at the end of the day, in Louisiana, the French language was "quote unquote" lost.
It's true, and right now it's very hard to bring it back. But there's efforts, and there's even about 50 schools now teaching French to students. So there's efforts. Yeah.
Do you have a worry that it's not overnight, but there could be a long-term process where Quebec could become Louisiana in this sea of English?
With the fights we see right now and the political implication and all the debates, and I don't see it coming because people talk about it a lot. While in Louisiana, it's not the same scenario. It's not the same scenario. And here there's the federal government. There's a lot at play in Quebec, and people want to keep it and fight for it. So even Anglophones, even
Anglophones. That's right. And it's so interesting because you brought up some of the issues in the rest of Canada, right, and getting services in French, and just little things. The current government named someone to be Governor General who does not speak French.
It's
right?
true, exactly. So
I wonder what that does to francophones when they see that.
But when we want to interview her as a journalist, or when she wants to connect with Quebecers, it's harder. Or even some ministers right now, the housing ministers, he's learning, but we know it's a hot issue in Quebec. So some people say it should have been people able to talk in French to Quebecers about this major issue in the province.
I'll ask you this last question. Is the future of the French language, through all of your travels around the world and covering French in Quebec, and just covering Quebec, is the future of the French language bright?
Yes, it is. And we see the numbers. So by 2050, we expect to have 500 million French speakers, while it's 300 million right now. So there is going to grow by 200 million, mainly in Africa. Yep. And just now, the biggest Francophone city in the world, it's Kinshasa, in the Republic of Democratic Congo, Republic of Congo.
Yeah.
So French, the future of French is mainly in Africa also, because that's where it's going to grow.
So everyone who's on Twitter, I mean, you're a must follow. I'll retweet one of your things today. What's your Twitter again?
It's Étienne FG.
FG. Fantastic.
It's a pleasure to be Étienne or Steve.
Or Steve.
Yes.
Étienne,
let's keep Étienne.
Étienne Fortin-Gauthier is that man right there from Noovo. Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure. Take care.